Hello everybody! Today we are going to be doing 3 stories from RPGHorrorStories. So far everything in this subreddit is pretty long, so this is probably going to be a long episode. Makes sense, it's been a few months since I last recorded an episode. Sorry about that. Anyway, our first story is from u/poundcakebatter. You may start the campaign with a magic item if I prove it first. Every player loves to hear this. I immediately begin searching for one that is fun and makes sense for my character. Is an instrument of illusions alright with you, DM? Sure. Awesome. I come up with a backstory to bond the item to my character. As a street kid, she worked for a cruel city merchant that employed children to pickpocket/sabotage competitors. One day she had enough and stole the loot from the merchant's shop so she could perhaps sell it to help fund building a better life in the new city. She couldn't find a buyer, so decided to teach herself how to play and entertain taverns for money as she traveled. The illusion aspect of the loot sparked her interest in magic. Ta-da! A young bard is born. Fast forward a couple in-game years to the start of the campaign. My player meets the others and we team up to solve a shared problem out of necessity. The party is formed. Successful first session. The second session begins. Our party is confronted by a group of thugs that single me out and say, "We're here for the thief." Turns out they were sent by the merchant for my backstory, who is now rich and powerful enough to hire goons to use divination magic to track me down and get that common loot back after all these years. My character hates the merchant's guts and also treasures the loot, so she refuses. The party isn't really bonded enough to totally stand up for her, and the players just seem annoyed that my backstory is causing problems for the party already, so they say things like, "The merchant probably won't stop sending people until after you give it back. You didn't steal it after all. Just the loot. I'll buy you a new one later." Not wanting to derail the story with my backstory clearly nobody gives a shit about, or get into a fight our level 1s might have trouble with, even if they all support me, I give the loot back. The others seem happy to continue on with the main story. I have to spend all my gold to buy a component pouch because it is cheaper than any instrument I am proficient with. Later on in that first session, we end up getting into our first combat after all. The fighter bulldozes over everything, but they reveal our dual +3 longswords that each have magical on-hit effect that they can trigger a few times a day. The warlock is happy to show off their homebrew item that allows their eldritch blast to pierce enemies and hit others further behind. Nobody else seemed to recognize the hilarious discrepancy. Everyone is having fun though, so it is what it is. Fast forward a few IRL years to the end of the campaign. We are level 10. Fighter obliterated the BBEG with their swords before it got a second turn. And nobody ever bought their replacement loot. The end. That's a pretty interesting story. Our next story is from u/T Garrison. Rules lawyer outsmarts himself and has a fit. I had a player who played in a couple of campaigns. He was known to be a rules lawyer, and it was a bit of a pain to start, though I was relatively new to running games and he was reliable plus local. Which, again, is a big plus when you live in a relatively rural area with a small pool of players. When we first got started, he would challenge me on rules with the game. To keep things going, we defaulted to Rule 0 after some pushback. And every game was followed by 1 or 2-page single-space emails detailing the areas where he disagreed with my decisions. A few times, I did not retcon, but made clarified rulings for how things would proceed if it seemed like I made an incorrect call at the table. The vast majority of the time it boiled down to, "This is the way we're doing it in my games. Sorry if you disagree, and feel free to run a game by your rules. I'll even join as a player if you want." We started a long-running campaign in a crazy homebrew world during the heyday of D&D 3.5. There were 6 players. I allowed some third-party content, so everyone had slightly overpowered characters. Rarely do a group of players complain if they have too many strong abilities. After all, and this was a mostly fun game. It didn't stop the long post-game emails, and they continued to get longer every week from Mr. Ruleware, finally topping out at 4+ pages after every single game session. We had played the campaign from level 1 up to level 12 over more than a year, when they finally decided to rob the very well-protected vaults belonging to a lich. It was known this place was heavily trapped, and the one gap the group had struggled with the entire time was not having a rogue. They came up with inventive ways of finding, triggering, or dodging traps, and I was fine with this. After the upteenth trap in this particular session, they had located yet another magical trap. The rest of the party retreated 60 degrees around a corner, with the intention of sending in a summoned minion to trigger it. Mr. Rules Lawyer mocked the rest of the group for cowardice and explicitly stated, "These traps always have a radius of 30 feet. I'm going to stand 31 feet away from the trap and watch it go off." This particular trap happened to be a circle of death, which in 3.5 had a radius of 35 feet. I was doing my best to keep the devilish grin off my face, particularly since this is the third time they had found one of these, and I knew he was making a potentially fatal mistake with his character. The trap was well triggered, and the spell went off to the full radius, and Mr. Rules Lawyer rolled a natural 1 on his saving throw. Immediate character death results. First he whines that it isn't fair, then he suggested I lied about the radius. After looking up the spell, he then accused me of changing the trap type after he declared where he was standing. So I showed the whole group my notes and the trap map for everything they had covered. I had written it all up in Word and printed out the notes, so it wasn't like I could easily change them with my pencil on the table. The group rested, and the druid prepared to reincarnate and bring Mr. Rules Lawyer character back to life since he was their cleric. Rolling on the chart for the random reincarnation race, it was going to turn Mr. Rules Lawyer character into a human, which really isn't that bad, even if it was going to change up the stats a bit. And we're getting high enough that with some effort and a side quest, they could have gotten his race back. Instead, however, Mr. Rules Lawyer said his character would be offended to come back as human and would never do so, that the character's soul would rather stay dead. I asked him to confirm, the other players told him to stop being dramatic, and he insisted on this. I stated, the reincarnation fails because the character's soul decides not to come back. The body dissolves to ash and she is permanently dead. Mr. Rules Lawyer then threw a fit about being permanently dead. I didn't budge. He chose death for his character, over inconvenience, and I wasn't going to let that slide. I was happy to have rolled a new PC, especially since the ledge had an entire area devoted to unique specimens coming up. It was the perfect place for the party to find a new PC and get back into the game. That night, I received a 6-page diatribe after the game. Mr. Rules Lawyer's final ultimatum was that I should allow his character to come back as a ghost, which can possess the bodies of other characters, both PCs and NPCs, with no saving throw. While possessing a body, the ghost gets to keep all of his mental stats and character/class abilities while getting the body's physical stats and racial abilities. This possession had no time limit or way to end it other than, when I find a more suitable host, I'll just move on. This was clearly broken, and in no way the same power to grant to any PC or NPC. No saving throw versus indefinite possession? No way, no how. I declined, and he insisted he was never coming back, which I confirmed was correct, and then permanently disinvited him from this and all future campaigns with me. I printed the entire exchange to share with the other players, so they would know why I did this, and they were amazed I put up with the emails for so long, since they had no idea what was going on at all. After all was said and done, I discovered just how much extra stress those emails had added to my life, and actually felt rejuvenated and more excited to continue with the campaign. It was also a very valuable lesson in drawing boundaries with players, and now it cut off any of this behavior quite early. I don't mind if people disagree with my rulings, and I'm happy to discuss it with players, so we're all in agreement on how to go forward. But someone questioning all of my decisions as a GM is clearly a bad fit and should not be in my groups. I give this advice to other GMs and offer up this horror story as reasons you should not be afraid to set solid boundaries, even when you're new to running games. I completely agree there. Should definitely make sure to draw some boundaries. Our last story is from u/SaturnBerry Moth. D&D group wanted to kick me out right before my dad died. Cast, me, 25, non-binary. My mom and dad. My boyfriend, BF, 26 male. Rogue, 26 female, but butt heads with the most. Dungeon Master, DM, 30s male. And 2 other group members who will be mentioned in passing, a monk, 25 male, and a druid, 24 female. This group has known each other for over 5 years now. So some backstory. Me, my boyfriend, monk, DM, and rogue played in a campaign before this current one, and we had no major issues with it. Then, DM asked us if we'd like to join a homebrew campaign, and we all said yes. Druid hopped along for the ride as well since she was interested. This homebrew started several years ago, and at the time it was going well. This was pre-beer flu too, so we met in person. Then, about a year into the homebrew, maybe less, I got accepted into a 2-year medical program at my college. and was given a manager position at the retail store I worked at. I also started a second job, respite care, helping one of my other friends out. I needed the money as my retail job didn't pay me enough. The program also included mandatory unpaid internships that totaled an extra 20 hours a week. I warned everyone that my schedule was going to get difficult, but I would do my best to participate. I want to note that this homebrew was very complex, and the sessions were expected to be over 4 hours each and every week, sometimes twice a week, and only in the evenings. Sessions during the day weren't an option. Of course, my participation started to go down due to my school and work. At first, there wasn't any tension about this, but that started to change ever so slowly as me and the Rogue started to butt heads more and more. Then, beer flu hit, and we moved to only online. Picture it. Everything starts opening up 2021. I worked evenings and nights. My schedule was, quite frankly, insane. I only had 1 day off a month for about a year. My workplace kinda sucked, so I was called in at least once or twice a month to work on a day I didn't work. Sometimes to open the store before school, or to close it afterwards. At times, I even had to leave class to do this. A few times this landed on a day we were going to play, but I explained the situation always and said I was okay if they played without me. As y'all can imagine, my schedule was tight, but I always did my best to attend. Again, I make sure to post my schedule and try my best to keep everyone updated. Sometimes my store manager wouldn't post the schedule until Monday or Tuesday the week of, and I would be late. Again, the job sucked. Again, I did my best to explain the lateness and apologize. During all of this insanity, inside my home wasn't faring much better. For as long as any of these people have known me, they have known my dad has been sick for years. Since 2004 to be exact. He is crashing hard the last year of his life. Name the condition and he probably had it. I'm not going to list all the medical info, but the list includes TBI, unable to walk, COPD, and stage 4 CHF to name a few. Plus mental disorders such as severe depression on top of all of that. It was just heartbreaking. Again, I told the group what I was going on and he was dying. Mom and I couldn't leave the house, and one of us always had to be with him. Before anyone asks, no, the hospital wasn't an option at the time. He didn't want to stay there and his heart was failing. There wasn't anything else the doctors could do for him. That hadn't already been done. CHF is just like that. There's only so much technology and medical care that can be done in the face of an incurable and fatal disease. Not too long before he died, my BF told me that we had to meet in person. When we did, he told me that Rogue made a group chat and invited everyone to it, no me and the druid, to get us kicked out of the group/campaign and cited lack of participation as the reason. Rogue also slammed me for some mental illness issues with focusing and auditory processing issues, and said she purposely goes out of her way to avoid talking to me and ignores me. In the chat, my BF tried to defend me but got shot down by everyone else, including the DM. He was then pressured to promise not to tell me about the group chat. BF was disgusted by all of this, and thus contacted me to speak in person. I want to note at this point, he didn't want me to see the actual chat log, as he didn't want to upset me and stress me out more than I was already. We argued about it, but I eventually agreed with him. I really just didn't feel like dealing with this nonsense at the time, for obvious reasons, I hope. Since I technically didn't know about this group chat, I decided to just keep it a secret, didn't mention it to anyone else, and I pretended I didn't know about it. I'm very good at ignoring confrontation, these sort of things, sadly. As this isn't the first time this estrangement from people I call my friends has happened. I want to note, however, that not long before this group chat was made, or after it was made, I had been talking to the DM privately regarding my personal life as well as the Homebrew campaign, so I could try and stay on top of the lore and quests. I also expressed to him that I felt unwanted in the group, felt like there was animosity towards me, and a lot of tension. For the longest time, he told me none of that was true. It was like pulling teeth for him to say, well, Rogue is a little animosity towards you, but I totally don't understand it. He then admonished me and told me I need to be more compromising. Like, what's there to compromise about? I knew about the group chat, but decided not to bring it up at this time. I shouldn't have kept what I knew a secret, but I wanted to give these people the benefit of the doubt because I knew them for years as my friends. I just wanted to ignore it and pretend like nothing happened and that everything's fine. After my dad passed and I told the group, they gave me their condolences but never reached out to check on me. A month later, Rogue was complaining about the lack of playing. At that time, we had our last session a few days before my dad died. Anyways, it's 2022. We've played since my dad's death, but it's been months since we played at the time of writing this. DM went missing in action suddenly, and seemingly because of work. This is okay with everyone, as work is more important than D&D, it's understandable, and he's the DM, so if he's not available, then no D&D, of course. Funnily enough, the group also accepted BF being unavailable to work, school, and said it was understandable. And work/other D&D groups making Monk busy was an understandable situation as well. Just not when I have 2 jobs, full-time school with overnight clinicals, and a dead parent, I guess. I wish I could give a resolution, but there is none. Another issue came up between me and Rogue recently, and I left the campaign server. I also confronted Monk about the group chat. He said he didn't remember it and doesn't recall ever wanting me to be booted from the group. I have more shit-show stories about this group, as a lot has gone down, and maybe I'll share them one day. It's too much for this post. And that is the end, but there is a TLDR, so I'll quickly read that. TLDR. I was working 2 jobs, unpaid internship, and a full-time student while my dad was dying. A month before my dad died, my 5e group, DM included, made a group chat and wanted to kick me and one other player out for lack of participation, since it's clear that D&D isn't a priority for them right now. Real quote. I found out via my BF telling me this IRL due to how disgusted he was, and I sat on the secret until recently, which has been an entire year. Group lied to me about wanting me to be kicked out afterwards. And that is going to be it for this episode.